But first off, let's speak to former press spokesman for Queen Elizabeth II, Dickie Arbiter, here in the studio, and down the line, joined by constitutional historian Daniel Britton. Thank you all, Dickie. I'll turn to you first in the studio, if you don't mind. Great to see you as ever. Look, this was quite a bold and powerful statement from Prince William today. Just how unusual is it?
Well, it was bold and powerful, yes, I agree with you. But then he made a bold and powerful statement shortly after the Hamas terrorist attack of October the 7th, almost immediately after his father's spokesman, who talked of the barbarian act committed by the Hamas terrorists on the 7th of October. So it's not unusual, and I think we're living in a different age now, a different monarchy, a monarchy that is prepared to speak. We heard the King, when he was Prince of Wales, make all sorts of pronouncements. A lot of people didn't like it, but a lot of people did like it because he was saying what they were thinking. So Prince William coming out the way he has come out is absolutely right. People will listen. Whether they listen in the Middle East is something else. That is a long, hard hill to climb, and it's not going to be over anytime soon.
Yeah, you make a good point there about the Middle East. They have their own royal families. We sometimes hear from the royal family of Jordan, for example. They're obviously front and centre on these things. The British royal family, I mean, talk to me about the personality of Prince William. How in keeping is this with his character, this type of concern?
I think it's very much in keeping with his character. He slimmed down the amount of, I'm not saying work that he does, but the number of charities. He's focusing on certain charities, certainly not as many as his mother did, and not as many as his father used to do, and certainly not as many as the late Queen did. But he's got a nucleus of charities that he's going to focus on. But yes, there are going to be times when world affairs are going to interfere, because what happens in the Middle East is affecting us here. I mean, look what's happening in South Yemen with the shipping. It's got to go around the Cape, which means that the cost of living is going to go up here because commodity goods are going to be more expensive. And so everything that happens in that region affects us here. And we don't have a royal family that's going to sit back and say absolutely nothing. They'll be criticised if they don't say anything. Some people will criticise them for saying something, but they'll be more in favour of them saying something than those that don't.
Remind us of the way that the late Queen Elizabeth II, walked that tightrope, from the relationship you had from working with her. What did you find when she had concern over things like international conflicts?
It was very difficult for her. She was brought up in a different generation, a generation that really didn't get involved. And if it did say something controversial, it was usually something that was cleared by government. I think in my time, one of the sort of closest things that it got to was at the time of the Twin Towers attack. And she made a very profound statement, in a statement that was read out in the cathedral in New York at the time of the memorial service, in which she said, grief is the price we pay for love. She then made another profound statement at the time of COVID. We all remember her sitting there, same as suffering, same as everybody else, having to be isolated in the same way as we all were, in which she said, it's going to be hard, I'm paraphrasing now, but we're going to get out of it. We're going to see our friends again. We're going to see our family again. We will meet again, paraphrasing that Vera Lynn song. So she did tread a very difficult line. I remember one occasion going with her to Jordan. She looked over the Jordan Valley, and she was explained by the now King's brother, who was Crown Prince at the time, the conflict and the problems. And she did utter a very quiet, how terrible. That was the closest she's got to making a political statement. So she was very careful. Yes, she made the Prime Minister's speech in Parliament at the state opening, but that wasn't hers. That was very much the Prime Minister's. The only time she said what she wanted to say was at Christmas.
And behind closed doors as well. Look, really fascinating to learn that. Thank you, Dickie. Let's turn to Daniel Britton now and talk about the reason that we have this separation of royalty from politics. Remind our viewers why it is that we don't often see the monarchy wading into political events.
Because they don't want to step into political controversy, Rosanna. Political controversy has to be avoided at all costs. And we now have two members of the royal family, the most senior members of the royal family, the King and the Prince of Wales, who are not afraid to intervene on occasions. But look carefully at what Prince William has said. He calls for an end to the fighting as soon as possible. Well, you'd be hard pushed to find many people who would disagree with that. And he also talks about the terrible human cost of the conflict. And he's let it be known that he's going to see groups of people who are supporters of both sides in the next few weeks. It never bodes well when the royal family enter one side of a controversy or the other, but we have reached a position today where certainly the government, Labour and SNP, whilst not having identical positions, are jolly close to each other. And with the change of the US position at the UN, what Prince William is saying is not really at all different to what huge percentage of people in this country must be saying tonight.
As part of that, as Dickie was mentioning, Daniel, this sort of strive to modernise the monarchy, constantly at this kind of existential grip of trying to stay relevant, trying to stay modern, trying to sort of keep the status quo going, but adapt with the times. What do you read into this in terms of modernising the monarchy, or is it just business as usual?
No, I think they'll find things that they can talk about. It is a change from the late Queen Elizabeth. You asked, actually, you mentioned, Rosanna, about how they don't want to keep away from, they have to keep away from political controversy. And Dickie mentioned the Queen's speech, or the King's speech, as it was, when we heard it on the last occasion. In that, there were measures which many people thought would not be supported by the King, namely those on structures and green levies, etc., and then made a rather different point in his own personal Christmas message. So they are straying a little bit into those areas. But look, if we, as Dickie says, if we had a head of state and an heir to the throne who didn't involve themselves with matters which everyone is talking about in this country, that would seem bizarre, far more bizarre than occasionally taking part in the debate.
With a very carefully worded statement, as you so aptly put, Daniel. Daniel Dickie, thank you for laying out the royal context for this.